The least likely to put up, the most likely to give up information. Though C-3PO was loyal, the stormtroopers who had him under captivity were some of the most feared in the galaxy and knew how to get answers. Or so it seemed. How could the protocol droid's rebel friends get him out of this? What horrific interrogation techniques did the mercenaries have up their sleeves? Shortly after the rebels commandeered an enemy Star Destroyer and several months before the Battle of Hoth, a group of Imperial soldiers walked through the hallways of their starship. "We never come home empty-handed," proclaimed one of the Scar Troopers as they escorted C-3PO, the ever-prudish, anxious, and overbearing rebel droid, through the impossibly clean Star Destroyer bridge. A stark contrast to the now sinking Star Destroyer recently commandeered by the Rebel Alliance that was surrounded by nothing else but destruction and action. Rather, they were on the Devastator, one of the leading cruisers of the most prominent Imperial fleets, commanded by Darth Vader. He had expected the captured prisoner to be Luke Skywalker, whom the leader of the Scar Troopers, Sergeant Creel, had been ordered to bring in. Even after a deadly lightsaber duel between the two, Luke came out on top, and Creel's troops settled for taking in C-3PO due to him being in the wrong place at the wrong time, just missing the call to join his friends as they jumped ship in the Falcon. Now, cornered by the horde of scars that terrorized his friends and allies in the preceding battle, C-3PO stood isolated in the middle of the interrogation room, dimly lit by the sparse machinery around him. And ever the performer, the affable protocol droid told the Imperials what they wanted to know as he proudly regaled them with the stories of the great battles he'd seen alongside his master Luke. It was possible the first interrogation in which the captors wanted their subject in question to stop talking, as C-3PO relentlessly bragged about his time in the war after the troopers asked only one question. The once imposing interrogation droid hovered motionless with no use, with its commanding troopers just as confused and fed up. Vader, who of course was very familiar with the protocol droid from a past life, also watched on in ambivalence through a hologram. It was unclear as to whether C-3PO was playing the troops at their own game, or if he really had no concept of the danger he was in. Either way, his approach was working. The Empire was gaining no useful information on the new location of the Rebel fleet, just tales of the war through C-3PO's eyes. But he was attentive enough to know what they wanted to hear and how not to give it to them. As the troopers discussed amongst themselves as what to do with the petulant droid and how to relocate the Rebel fleet, C-3PO interjected to suggest that they may as well give up as navigation systems weren't exactly his strong point. Though they ignored him and continued to debate, the protocol droid's attention was still attached to their conversation and grew alert as they suggested dismembering him and scouring his memory banks. Despite protestation, they continued to ignore their subject to await the leader Darth Vader's verdict. Both surprisingly and unsurprisingly, the former slave boy, who in his life as Anakin had actually built that very droid to aid his mother unbeknownst to his underlings, calmly agreed, noting C-3PO as nothing more than useless junk. This clearly struck an uncomfortable chord with Vader as his calm declaration quickly turned to anger directed at his own Scar troops. Having failed their mission, Vader was unrelentingly disappointed in them and cautioned them not to make the same mistakes. As they began to prepare the execution of the droid, one of the Scars suddenly presented an alternate option. Despite C-3PO's stories becoming increasingly annoying, he realized that they all had one thing in common: the prominent rebel group of Luke Skywalker, Princess Leia, and Han Solo, some of the most prolific Alliance members that had been at the center of almost every major battle in the war thus far. Rather than killing him straight away, the troopers realized that the asset in front of them may be more useful than originally thought, and could just use him to reel the rebels in. "I mean, they stole a Star Destroyer, right? Maybe they're even crazy enough to steal him." Still agreeing to dismantle the droid, the trooper managed to convince his allies that using C-3PO to send a message to the rebel fleet would be more effective, giving them the fleet and information they needed, without having to purge the answers out of the droid's machinery. C-3PO was sure that the rebels would come and rescue a figure as important as him, which, unfortunately, was exactly what the Empire wanted: to lure them into certain doom. Who'd have thought C-3PO would become the Empire's #1 most wanted? He was actually quite an underestimated entity in the rebellion. Though he didn't display much threat, force, or resourcefulness, it couldn't be denied that he had indeed gotten his rebel friends out of many a sticky situation. Plus, he was witness to many, many pivotal moments in the short history of the Galactic Civil War, meaning his memory bank was full of key moments for both sides.